Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to Source ADV. I'm Mark Jackson. As you can see here, I've got a 2019 YZ250X that's in pieces right now. The suspension is going out. I'm putting some Tubliss systems in the front and rear tires. So yeah, it looks a little rough at the moment, but I promise you it's a running bike. So if you're like me, you're over 6 feet tall and you feel that the YZ cockpit is a little bit tight, right? Like your triangle from the bars to where your hips are, to the foot pegs, it's just a little bit tight for you. And you're looking for lowered foot pegs to open up that dimension a little bit more. You'll quickly find that there's not that many options for this bike. There's one company called Flow Motorsports that makes aluminum lower foot pegs that drop them 12 millimeters down and 10 millimeters back, which is what the Fastway foot pegs are supposed to do on bikes as well. I have the Fastway pegs on my 500EXC. I have the Evo Airs. I love them. They're super lightweight. I love the fact that you can change the cleats around. You can change how you want the cleats pitched and that sort of thing. But if you do a little bit of research, you'll find that on the YZ250, I think all YZ250s, at least from 2006, and definitely my 2019 YZ250X, they do not work in the lowered position. I found that to be partially true. I've figured out a way to make these foot pegs work in the lower position with a little bit of work, a little bit of modification, and probably a little bit of commitment to modifying the pegs permanently and slightly modifying your foot peg mount permanently. So with that being said, let's go through that. Yeah, one of the things too is I wanted to keep the factory YZ kickstand. Despite the stupid looking spring, it's actually a really good working and lightweight kickstand. And the options are, around $150 for the replacements that mount to this pin and the subframe. And a lot of people have issues with this subframe bolt coming loose. And this thing's actually pretty bulletproof. So I was trying to keep this because you can do a lowered foot peg mount where you actually retain the stock foot peg, but you drop it about 10 millimeters or 12 millimeters. I think it's like ST Performance or something, makes this lowered foot peg mount where it just kind of takes these the pin mounting points and pushes them down. The downside is, once again, you lose that factory kickstand and you end up having to throw $160 at a problem, and you don't get badass pegs that are bigger, stronger, have more cleat options. I'll be getting some super sharp cleats for these pretty soon. So yeah, so let's go through how to make the Fastway pegs fit your, in this case, and please research on your own. I'm not going to tell you exactly what bikes they fit on, but this is a 2019 YZ250X. I know for a fact that the 2016s, not much has changed on this bike other than a front rotor, so you can probably bet that the 2016 YZ250X and newer, and probably the 2019 YZ250, you might actually be able to do less modification. So let's go through this and figure out how to get this peg on this bike, have a lower foot position, and have less back pain. Let's do it. All right, guys, little disclaimer here. You are going to be modifying some of the key controls of the bike and modifying the foot peg mount by cutting it with a cutoff wheel a teeny bit. So please do this at your own risk. If you're not 100% confident about doing this project, don't do it. Just know that I'm not an engineer. I don't work for Fastway. I don't represent anything Fastway is saying. And this is just what I figured out could work. It seems like it's pretty close to the strength of stock, and I'm going to be confidently running it. But please do this at your own risk, and and let me know if you have any questions. Happy to try to field them. But at the end of the day, I really wanted to get these pegs on this bike, so let's make it happen. All right, so I'm going to talk from behind the camera, which I hate, but it's the only way I can figure out how to shoot this right now. So the first thing you have to modify when you put the Fastway peg on is you'll notice that you can't even get the pin to go through the lower part of the mount. It actually hits the thick part of the foot peg right here, actually hits the flat surface on the foot peg mount right here. So you actually have to let's take this guy out. So the first thing you have to do is actually use what I used was a Dremel tool with a cutoff wheel and flattened out everything inside there. It just has a little bit of a bump in here normally, and I just basically tried to make this as square as possible, right? So that way, when this guy goes in, this part right here, oops, right there is a little bit fatter than the stock peg, so it literally won't even go in when you first try to get it in. So this part's a little bit fatter right here. So it literally, when you try to get this in, you can get the top pin in, but it actually won't even, it's hitting up against the foot peg mount. It will not pass the pin through the bottom hole. So that's the first thing you have to do, is go ahead and open up this little area all the way from the top to bottom. And you're also going to want to do that when you first start doing it. You don't need to do it up here, but what you find is that you actually want to do that up here because you need a flat surface for the upper stop to go up right there. The other thing to note too is that these pegs actually don't work in the high position either. When you have this pin flipped around and they're in the top high position, which is basically like the stock position, this stopper right here hits the bolt right here. So like literally, instead of the peg being able to flip up to here, like when you're passing through rocks and stuff, it only literally goes to like there, which looks like a great recipe to basically breaking a peg off in tight rocky stuff and or just launching you from the bike. So, you know, I'm actually not recommending using these pegs for the high position. It's almost like a permanent low position peg only. I'm not even sure why they sell it this way. The second thing you have to fix is, or that I'm fixing, you don't have to do shit. The second thing that I'm fixing here is replacing this Torx mount bolt, which is the same one that's at the top here. Replacing that with a nice big flat 17 millimeter head M10 1.25 pitch bolt. I've actually, the only one I could find was a little bit longer, which is totally fine because these holes just pass all the way through the frame. So you're gonna replace this bolt with this guy because otherwise your stopper right here has only the rim to stop on. Basically, it would my guess would be that it eventually kind of flatten this out and also flatten this out from having just two very small pressure points to contact. Actually, you can see I've kind of let it hit a few times. Come on, buddy, focus. Oop. I don't know if you can see that, but there's already, just from letting it hit on that surface a few times with the spring, there is like an indent right there and an indent right there. So over time, that would definitely put some wear and tear on the pegs and that lower bolt. So if you replace it with a big hex head, you have a nice flat surface for when this thing comes down and stops. So that's the second thing you want to fix. You're gonna have to, so the third thing you're gonna have to fix because of that is that once you get that big bolt in there, you actually need to take your little angle grinder and carve a little bit out right here so you can get a socket on here and torque it to the proper spec. Now, if you're lazier, I also noticed there's a little bit where the hex head right around here, where I just wanted to flatten out this whole surface. Essentially what I ended up doing was taking the cutoff wheel and just flattening out this whole surface. I'm sure there's a more precise way you could do this with, you know, I don't know, a CNC machine or something. But if you want to just do it on the bike, take the cutoff wheel and try to make this whole surface flat, and then give yourself enough room. Just take a little notch out right here so that you can get a 17 millimeter socket on this bolt and torque it to the right spec. So that's that. So the fourth thing you're gonna need to fix is that it seems to only be a problem on the kickstand side, but the return spring for the foot peg, this notch actually won't fit on this thing without some modification. So what I did was just took a pair of vice grips and kind of pinch this open a little bit. This is usually a right angle right here. So if you just kind of pinch that open a little bit, and then it'll fit on here, and now you have a return spring that works. So that's the fourth thing. All right, the fifth thing is that just like with that bolt taking a bunch of impact over time, I don't trust that. Let me hold these with my feet. I'm not too into the idea of even this surface right here hitting that big flat hex head over and over again. So what I'm going to do is put a bolt in here, bottom it out all the way, kind of crank it down with a bunch of red Loctite, permanent Loctite, bottom it out all the way here, and then use my same cutoff wheel to cut this perfectly flush really slowly, and then have a nice flat surface right there for this to bottom out on. For anybody that says like there's no way that's going to be strong enough, well, guess what? It's actually almost exactly the same width as the stopper on the stock peg. So yeah, you're only getting a little bit more contact because of that hex head. That's definitely true. I mean, you're losing a little bit of contact because of that hex head. That's definitely true. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm looking for something that's going to last a few years, and then I can fix, you know, I can always replace the bolt and or replace one or both of the pegs. As long as it doesn't destroy the foot peg mount in any way, I'm totally happy with this for a few years. So on the passenger side, you don't run into the same amount of problems. Actually, the casting on the foot peg mount is very different looking, and I'm guessing that's because that's a custom-made foot peg mount for the factory kickstand. On the passenger side, all you need to do is notch out a little teeny bit at the bottom here, and I'm talking about just a teeny tiny bit, right? At the end of the day, this is the thing that holds you to the bike and could break. So I notched out just enough to get a 17 millimeter socket in there, right? So I can torque this thing. I've literally probably notched out maybe a millimeter right there to get this one in. So that was pretty easy. Also on this side, you can see that the top of the foot peg mount is thicker. The Fastway included foot peg spring fits perfectly on there, so that's totally fine. So the last thing you'll need to adjust for your own specification is the pitch of the peg, right? With the factory Fastway pegs, one of the really cool features of them is that there's this little screw right here that goes into the stopper and allows you to, with the use of some various shims, these little guys, essentially make that bolt sit out further or more inward to adjust the pitch of your peg. Basically, the higher up the peg is, the more your knees are going to want to pinch the side of the bike here, which is nice. So I basically used this little angle thing here to match, to take what was to kind of figure out where the stock pegs were in comparison to the frame. And then I actually like a little bit more upward pitch to promote a little bit more inward knee. So then what you have to do is essentially just use this hex head here and file it a little bit down depending on where you want it to be. So for now, all I had to do with this particular bolt was just make it perfectly flush and get rid of any high spots because of some writing or that sort of thing. This bolt, from where it is actually perfect. Now, if you wanted a lot more pitch, you could theoretically add a washer behind that bolt and push this thing up a little bit. But I was noticing that the contact area between the stopper part of the peg and the bolt, the more you kind of push that out, the more it becomes angled. Right now I've got a pretty good amount of contact, like flat contact between this stopper area and this bolt. I like that, and the pitch is almost perfect. It's a teeny bit more than the stock peg, which is awesome, right? It's just a little bit more pitched up. So I got really lucky with this particular bolt here, and it ended up being exactly where I wanted it to be. So that's what you had to modify there. And I did the same thing and just measured the head of the bolt thickness wise with some calipers and matched the passenger side. So yeah, that's it there. Another thing that's really great to note about having one of these little adjustable angle tools around is that one of the things you can do is figure out exactly where your rear brake pedal is in the stock position. You know, use this flat surface to go there and then go to a point on the brake pedal there. You can use this there on these stock pegs to set an angle that you know is exactly where you like it to be, assuming you've already got your rear brake pedal set up to where you like it to be. And then use this thing to, when you have the Fastway pegs in there, to set your brake pedal height, again, using this little adjuster bolt. All right, so here's what the peg looks like after you bottom out that bolt in there. And then I used the cutoff wheel to get it off. You could use a hacksaw too. Hacksaw would probably be better actually if you had a bench vise, and then just use a file to clean off any burrs or anything like that. And then theoretically, if you didn't like the pitch of your peg, once you've done this, you could theoretically, I'd recommend filing down the head of the bolt a little bit, or grinding down the head of the bolt a little bit to bring your pitch lower. And I don't know if I'm saying, maybe it's peg height, pitch, whatever, but you know, you lose the adjustment right here, but you could modify this stop, which is your bolt, which is also replaceable. So if you went too far, oh crap, okay, just go grab another bolt and then start over again. And if you feel like you went too little, grab a washer and put it behind this bolt, retorque it, Loctite it, all that good stuff, and then you can bring it back up again and work your way down to a pitch you really like. So yeah, so overall, not that hard of a modification. You literally cannot use these in the high position either, so I don't even know why they sell them that way, right? Because look at that. The stop literally would hit that bolt right there. So honestly, the only way you can use these is in this modified low position. So yeah, so if you want to do this, go ahead and do it at your own risk, right? Like you're modifying the key controls of the bike. You're, notching this foot peg mount a little bit. The other side is way less involved, but it can be done, and you can get Fastway pegs on your bike. It's just going to take a little bit of effort. So yeah. So as you can probably tell from this video, the bulk of the work here is on this left side, driver's side foot peg, probably because of this kickstand mount. My guess would be this would be a little bit easier on a YZ250. And as you can see there, everything stops nice and right. It's got a good pitch. Yeah, the passenger side is definitely way easier. Just do your little bolt head, bottom this thing out and carve out a little bit of space right here for the 17mm screw, 17mm socket. And then you got a nice sturdy looking foot peg. And then use your little level thing like this to set your brake height, and you're good to go. All right, thank you for tuning into Source ADV. I'll be doing a lot more work on this YZ250X, so please subscribe. We've also got some other videos about building an ultralight adventure bike for the KTM 500EXC and modifying this Tacoma behind me too. So please subscribe, like the channel, all that good stuff. Go to sourceadv.com. Thanks so much and enjoy the ride out there. Take care.